making workshop supported by Hastings Museum. This is workshop number 2, where we're going to look at finessing the costumes that we've made and also adding details to them before we then put them on. I hope you've all been having fun with the making process and that you've been able to use things that we looked at and learnt about in workshop number 1. And also that you've realised the great potential there is in using paper and card to make costumes. So to get us warmed up again for this next bit of making and for adding the finessing details to our costumes, I think it would be great if we did another quick-fire making exercise. This time, instead of a ruff, we're going to look at making a hat or fascinator in 5 minutes. Same rules apply as last time. The only rule as such is that you have to be able to wear it on your head, hands-free. So be brave and be bold in your thinking again, and use any of the materials that you've collected. Here are some examples of paper hats and fascinators to use as inspiration and to get you thinking. Think about how to support your piece on your head and also how it will balance. Feel free to pause here for a closer look if you need to. You have 5 minutes to make your head creation, starting now. fascinator that I've made in 5 minutes, inspired by the Samurai Warriors metal feathered helmet that we looked at in workshop 1. And in the next few stills I'll take you through how I made it. So here is where I've got to with my paper costume so far. As I said in workshop 1, my plan was to create a skirt element to it, and then also a fascinator, and then a neck ruff as well. So this is the skirt that I've made so far. As you can see, I've made this kind of base framework out of strips of cardboard, which sort of looks and behaves a bit like a crinoline that would have been worn as a kind of undergarment for skirts in Elizabethan, Jacobean, Carolean times. And that's, yes, all been constructed out of cardboard boxes that I've stapled together. I made sure at the top here to keep it so that it could be opened, so I've just laced through a bit of old raffia sort of parcel string, so that then it can be easily got into and out of. And then as a sort of additional decorative element, I've added these cardboard circles, which I've given sort of a relief to by adding smaller circles on top of these larger ones, which kind of, yeah, gives it a bit more interest on the surface, and also is something that I can then tie into the headpiece that I'm making as well. So to go with the skirt that I've made this fascinator sort of headpiece, which incorporates the same circle sort of motif as I've got on the skirt. These are all actually made just by interlocking, by cutting small little sections out of circles of card and then interlocking them together like so. So there's actually relatively little tape needed for this design, and it's quite strong because of it, because it's all kind of self-supporting. I've then used pages of magazine to create these cone shapes, which you'll see in the next little video that I've tied into the ruff that I've made. And then simply, like with our 5-minute headpiece hat fascinator, I've made just this band that sits around the head to support the whole thing. And lastly, here is the neck ruff that I've made, which doesn't look like it at the moment, but when it's worn around the neck it sort of all splays out. This, as I said, is just made from pages of a magazine that I've rolled on the diagonal to create these cones. The longer ones are made of 2 pages stuck together, similarly to how I made the ruff in the 5-minute ruff exercise, and then curled into cones, and the smaller ones are just single magazine pages, done the same. I've then poked through this piece of wire, you can see here, that joins them all together and creates a nice kind of stable base for them. I'll then probably put a little bit of cardboard on the ends here, so that I can make it a bit more comfortable to wear around the neck. Before our costumes are completed, I thought it might be useful to have one last look at some different methods of creating textures on paper. So think of it like creating your own fabric that you then incorporate into your costume, adding a last little bit of detail and finesse to your designs. So you might want to use these sections as the turn up of a cuff or a collar detail. You might want to incorporate them into a ruff if you've made one, or even cut out circles of your textured paper fabric to use as buttons. So here are some ways of creating these different textures. You could use card or newspaper or pages from books or magazines to do this too. It doesn't have to be plain paper. You can create springs by folding the paper back on itself, coils, cut zigzags and glue them down and fold them back. Make tiny scrunched up balls of paper to stick down onto your costume, or cut strips and curl them like ribbon on a present. Pause this video on this image and have a go at making a couple of your own paper fabric textures. They can be small little sections, or you can choose to decorate an entire A4 page, up to you. You can then add them to your costume. So we've almost reached the end of this workshop series in making costumes using paper and card. Hopefully you've had a good time designing and constructing your costume creation, and I hope you're pleased with your results. I hope too that it's helped you to see how brilliant the paper and card and recyclable materials found around our house can be in helping us get creative and create our own costumes. So if you feel like you've finished or near finished, then it's time to take your costume off its hanger or pick it up off the floor, depending on how you've made it, and look at how it fits onto yourself or maybe a member of your household. It might be that you need to make little tweaks here and there to make it fit properly, whether it's making it smaller or bigger, or adding little strengthening bits of card or paper to reinforce it in places, but now's the time to get it on the body. Once you've done that, it would be brilliant if you could document your work for yourself and also to share with us and the Hastings Museum, whether that's photographing it or maybe you want to do a little catwalk runway show and video that to put onto the Facebook page. Whatever you do, yeah, it would be great for you to, if you could share your results with us all. Thank you all so much for taking part in this workshop. I hope you found it interesting and inspiring, and that you've had fun making your very own paper costume. Remember, you don't have to have completed it now. Take all the time you need to get it finished in the way that you want it. And lastly, thank you to Hastings Museum for hosting these creative workshops.